Hey everyone, Clay here. Just wanted to let you know my graphic novel Bloody Hell is now for sale in stores and on Amazon. So if you'd like to help support the show, get yourself a copy of that. Thanks so much. Here's the show. Welcome to the Rotten Horror Picture Show. Hello. Welcome back to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast, where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 best horror movies of all time list. My name is Clay. With me is Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
I don't know, because I had to watch this fucking movie.
I mean, we're on a bit of a trend. This is our second OBGYN-centered film.
I really don't like it. I am ready to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to a different wing of the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't we just have some normal, like, stabbings or, I don't know, just creepy nurses that aren't involved in anything childbirthy?
I don't want to ruin it right now, but I did hit the randomizer earlier.
Oh, no.
And don't worry, we got a good one coming up next time.
Rewatching Audition.
No. Today we're doing It's Alive from 1974. It is number 196 on our list with 70% Rotten Tomato score.
What is wrong with 78% of people?
I don't know if this is jumping the gun too much, but I feel like we're going to have a long discussion about what's going on with this list.
Yeah, I think we have to.
Yeah. Had you seen this before?
No.
Had you heard of it before?
I think I had, but I had much different / better expectations for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was. I came to this. I would say I came to this pretty much entirely fresh.
Yeah.
What about you?
Same. This was one of those. This was a big video store, much like Dead and Buried. This was kind of a big video store movie for me, where I saw the case.
Yes.
You know, it's got pretty iconic artwork of the baby bassinet or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like that one still image is much more vivid to me than anything else about the movie.
Yeah, I think in my brain I get it mixed up with Sometimes They Come Back, the Stephen King movie.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm not really sure why. I think it might be the font or something.
I mean, it's probably around the same time period, so I could definitely imagine some of the styling being similar.
But yeah, this was one I never picked up. I knew it only from the cover. And boy, if I could go back in time
and warn past Clay,
tell my past self what he was missing, he would say thank you and then just keep walking into the different section.
And when we got to this movie on our list, he would say, I think we can skip that one.
Yeah, well, yes. Let's not bury the lead, I guess. But yeah, we are going to take a quick break. We're going to play the trailer for you, and then we are going to very excitedly talk about this movie that I'm sure you can tell we both loved.
Number one fans.
It's alive. It's alive.
Can you hear me? It can't be saved. It's gotta die.
It's alive. It's alive.
Why are you so anxious to be the one to do it?
It's alive.
Doctor! Demons out here!
It's alive.
Now, nobody knows how this thing happened. It's really a matter of speculation, and I think perhaps that's for the best. After all, if we find out that the cause is medication that we manufacture and it was administered over a long period of time, well,
What do your interests recommend?
absolute destruction of this thing.
It went down the storm drains.
That's how it can travel the length of the city without anybody seeing it.
Don't touch me. Don't you touch me. They stole my baby. Come on, get down. Did you see it? Did you see it? What does it look like?
What are you
Get those cameras out of my face, please. I got no comment. That had nothing to do with this. Will you get that
Thing out of my face. Get out of the way.
He could have killed you. You know why he didn't? You know why he didn't kill you?
Look out, Charlie!
You've never been exposed to radioactivity in radioactive material or undergone extensive x-rays?
No, Doctor, I told you.
Well, we can't rule out genetic damage.
Let go of
My department has already cautioned the police about excessive violence. If it could be dispatched with a bullet, or better still, some kind of a gas. Undoubtedly, it is very small, and any kind of bodily harm, especially from gunshots or explosives.
In other words, you want me to sign away the body, is that it?
Well, it's your right. After all, you are the child's father.
All right, It's Alive, written and directed by Larry Cohen, starring John P. Ryan, Sharon Farrell, Andrew Duggan, gender politics that feel outdated even for the time the movie was made, and Michael Ansara, better known as the voice of Mr. Freeze in Batman the Animated Series, and Kang the Klingon in Star Trek, in a blink and you'll miss him role as the police chief. Seriously, he's on screen for like 30 seconds, tops. Amanda, what happens in It's Alive? Do I have to read the exclamation point? Like, do I have to say it's alive every time?
I think you do.
Okay.
Yeah. Just for accuracy's sake.
Okay. What happens in It's Alive?
Leaving their son Chris with a family friend, Frank and Lenore Davis head to the hospital for the birth of their second child, which turns out to be a mutant who kills many doctors and nurses as it escapes. Convinced his monstrous son must be destroyed, Frank ignores Lenore and Chris's pleas and tries to destroy the freakish progeny, unaware that the infant may be the blameless product of an experimental drug gone wrong.
So this is going to be the first in a number of times I say this about It's Alive.
Yes.
Great setup.
Excellent premise.
That synopsis, fantastic.
Yes.
10 out of 10 would see that movie.
Yes.
Now, what are some of the things we might find in this movie?
Well, Clay, some things you might find in It's Alive include a cop whose specialty is surprisingly not hunting and killing babies.
You know, every precinct needs one, just in case they have a situation that calls for other skills.
Yeah, and I guess that guy was just already busy hunting and killing other babies.
And that's the scene that Michael Ansara is in. He plays the chief of police who just stands there and there's just like jokes because that cop is like,
oh God,
my wife and I just lost our child. Had a
and
miscarriage.
He's like, well, you should be grateful.
Yeah. He's just like, well, you should be glad you don't have teenagers. Their baby.
You will also find a nurse with too much information and not enough bedside manner.
My original version of that one, I was going to say a young Paula Jones as a nurse, but I don't think anybody would get that. Anybody who gets that joke shouldn't laugh at it. So, it's not a good joke.
I laughed at it. Whoops. You will also find business meetings, car rides, phone calls, changing a light bulb, smoking indoors inside a hospital, and a lengthy scene about PR firm client retention.
Yes. All of the things that you come to the horror movies for.
Yeah. Isn't that a riveting list
of
things that have happened in this movie?
Compared to the synopsis, it sounds like the same movie.
But you will be happy to hear that in keeping with the general theme of this list, you will also find intensely questionable parenting. Intensely.
So yeah, it's alive. Great synopsis.
Yes.
Great poster. Great title.
Yep.
Larry Cohen, writer-director of this movie, is a famous schlock director and writer.
Okay.
He has some of his more famous movies are Q, the Winged Serpent. He did Return to Salem's Lot, the sequel to Salem's Lot. He wrote Maniac Cop. He wrote the movie Phone Booth. Do you remember that movie, the Colin Farrell movie Phone Booth?
Oh, is that the one where he's like
the one where he's in the phone booth?
Trapped in the phone booth because he can't get off the phone or people will die or something insane like that?
Yes, yeah. That reminds me of one of my favorite jokes from The Office when they're on the bus going to the beach and somebody brings up the movie Limitless and Phyllis goes, "Oh, is that the one where the guy becomes limitless?" It's a stupid joke, but it's always one of my favorites.
I don't remember that one. That was
he also did a movie called The Stuff, which I look forward to doing as a wild card at some point because I've only seen it once or twice. I saw it in college. I loved it. And it is definitely a schlocky movie, but I loved it, and I hope it holds up.
Yeah.
However...
has It's Alive shaken your faith?
After watching this movie, I wonder if maybe my faith is misplaced because... people always say as advertised. It's like, oh yeah, how was it? As advertised. It says what's on the tin.
Yeah.
If you're English. This movie, technically not, I guess you could say as advertised, but there's like no monster baby in this movie.
No, you get glimpses of it. I feel like a supercut of the monster baby in this movie would maybe take about 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Of a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, and as we alluded to, not so subtly, there is like everything but monster baby that takes up the most of this.
Yes, there's lots of phone call. Like when I read that list of dumb, boring things, those dumb, boring things are actually the vast majority of the runtime of this movie.
Yes.
People talking on the phone, people driving back and forth in cars, people having meetings.
Yeah. It's there are like the halfway point or like, the hour mark is usually a big moment in a movie. It's like where the hero has his first false victory or his biggest loss.
You're kind of setting things up for the back half.
Like in The Dark Knight, the halfway point is where Rachel gets killed and they catch the Joker and stuff like that. The halfway point of this movie is, and I texted this to you as we were watching it, is John Ryan's character, the father, Frank, getting let go by his boss after his boss is like, you really need to take some time off.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to take time off. I got a lot of clients coming up. He's like, hey, the clients, they get a certain thing that they're into. It was a discussion about like paperwork, essentially.
Right.
And it was at that point that I was like, this is a great film treatment that I think they made before they figured out how to maximize the concept.
Yes.
Like they didn't have enough money or something to do it.
Or they needed to decide. My kind of rough theory around this movie is that they could not decide the tone.
Yes.
And so they couldn't decide which direction to go with it. Like
I would believe that. Yeah.
Is it like a psychodrama? Is it supposed to be sort of like a lot of like psychological internal strife and complications? Is it a monster movie? Is it kind of supposed to be a satire? Because like it's a little bit of those things in many moments, but it's not enough of those things in any moment.
Yeah.
And then it tries to play things straight that I feel like it should have played campy, and vice versa.
Oh yes, yeah.
Like there's just so much. It's interesting because like the movie starts with Frank and Lenore waking up. Lenore has woken her husband Frank up in the middle of the night because she's extremely pregnant and she's going into labor and they need to go to the hospital. And they have this sort of weird leaving the house scene where they're like extraordinarily calm about it.
That's the whole movie. Everybody is extraordinarily calm about everything in this movie. Yes.
Yes. And so it's weird because she starts to look kind of distressed as this is happening, but she's trying to be like a good 70s wife and keep it together because she's not supposed to like trouble her husband who's picking out his outfit. And they get to the hospital and everything's still relatively like, oh, I'm going to have my baby. Yes, you are, ma'am. Please come with me. Lots of like, just like, oh, we're going to walk through the halls. No, we're going to put the gown on you. Like very calm. And then we finally get to the birth and delivery scene, which we don't actually, we like see it a little bit beforehand, but we don't actually see the baby come out, and we don't see what the baby does immediately after.
No, we won't see that until about 30 years later in Knocked Up. Right. Where you get a full close-up.
True. But I mean, we don't see, they don't do the subtly covered and then here's the baby it's a monster. Like we don't get that revelation. We see a nurse come stumbling out of the room covered in blood and fall down.
Yeah.
And then Frank, the father, runs in. And that's when I thought this movie was going to go totally batshit.
Yes,
like,
same.
I thought, because it comes in and there's just bodies everywhere and they're covered in blood. And she's like chained to the bed, which they don't actually do. When you have a baby, you're not like manacled to the hospital bed.
Right.
But she's manacled to the hospital bed and left kind of like with her legs up in the air, and she's covered in sand. She's screaming and the baby's gone. And I was like, oh, the rest of this movie is going to be insane. Mm-hmm. And then fucking nothing happens.
Yeah. Up until that point, I was very much on board up to that point because the beginning is very casual.
Uh-huh.
And the whole filming style of this movie is interesting because it's got that 70s sort of documentary inspired kind of feel where it's a lot of like handheld camera.
Right, it almost feels like home video at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually it reminded me of, like the mumble gore or mumblecore type movies.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the conversations were very casual and kind of hard to hear in certain places.
Yeah,
they
they
were
almost
just kind of
seemed
chatting
like
about stuff.
unscripted.
Yeah,
in a way, they didn't seem carefully plotted out.
Right.
Yeah,
and so they're casually going to the hospital because she's in labor. You get this extended sequence where the father just starts making an old man voice and
in the car.
Yeah, like he was just rolling on it, and he's like, no, just keep going, and he used all of it.
Yeah, he loved it.
Yeah. Which kind of is, I think, works as like a goofy dad kind of thing where he's like the dad pushing it too far.
Sure, yeah, and he thinks he's funnier than he is.
Right.
But it's not played that way. Or it's not played that way enough.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Yeah. And then there's the scene that I also skipped over where he's in the labor waiting room with all the other 70s dads smoking their cigarettes and playing poker and complaining about lead.
See, like that stuff I love. I really like that stuff because like it's not explicitly played for laughs, but like it's kind of like this is ridiculous. And it's so casual, and then they slowly feed you into the reveal that this baby monster happens, and like you said, you get this great gory aftermath sequence, and I had the same feeling as you. I was like, okay, great slow beginning. They just lit the fuse, and now the rest of it's going to be madness.
Yep.
And then like the next scene is another casual conversation between the doctor and the Frank, where he's like Frank, where the doctor's like, Frank, we think you should probably just go home and get some rest. We don't really know how this is going to play out.
And he's like kind of vaguely threatening the hospital with litigation because he's like, somebody stole our baby and I'm holding this hospital responsible. And they're like, well, come on now. It might be a murderous mutant.
Yeah, we're not doing it justice by trying to describe it. It's a lot of people acting way too casual about the fact that there is a murderous infant on the loose.
Yes.
Who has killed like 7 people.
It's bad enough that it's like he gets in the car to drive home and it's on the radio.
Yes.
Like it's already on the radio news, the massacre at like Santa Monica Hospital or whatever it is.
And Frank is like, he's not freaked out by it. He's just kind of annoyed.
He's annoyed because they name the family.
Yes.
Yeah. Frank and Lenore Davis or whatever. And he's like, oh, God damn it.
Yeah. And it's
this is definitely going to get back to my boss at the PR firm.
From that point, you've got these small scenes of this baby killing people, which those are fun. Like the milkman scene was fun. That was probably the best one.
Yeah, and even the one where the baby is sort of crawling through the like tall grass, and the woman hears something, and he kills her.
Right.
But like they're so short and they're so disconnected from anything that's happening in the main plot with the central characters.
And also there's like no urgency to anything where it's like this is on the radio that this has happened.
Right.
But you're getting a scene where people are just casually delivering milk and not freaking out about the fact that there's a murderous monster baby on the loose.
Right. Yeah, it's so weird. And like I'm not a big I can like take or leave gore. I think when gore is done well, or when it serves the story in the right way, whether that's like to be over the top and gross out, or to be dramatic or frightening, I'm for it. I don't think it needs to be in every horror movie.
Sure.
But in this one, you don't actually see, you see the baby, and it's like these really quick cuts between somebody like with their hands up, and it's clear the baby has attacked them, and then you just see a close-up of a gross mouth with like fake flesh in it.
Right.
But you never see any sort of like how is this baby doing any of this? It's still like the size of a baby.
It's kind of like the rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yes,
where it seems to just propel off the ground at people's necks.
But I would love to see a scene where it's like using the fact that it's a baby to its advantage. So it's just kind of like, and is like crying, and some like poor person is like, oh my God, a baby, someone just left it here, and like pick it up, and then it chomps onto your face.
Yeah, like think about this whole movie.
Yeah.
And then think about that one scene from Dead Alive where he takes the zombie baby to the park.
Yes.
Much more satisfying in that 3-minute scene than this entire movie.
Yes. Yeah. But so it's tonally really weird that it ratchets up so quickly at the beginning of the movie and then goes back down to like, we have to drive Lenore home from the hospital, and now that she's home, she's trying to cook something in the kitchen, but she's having a tough time because her baby's a monster and it's disappeared and it's killing people.
Well, that's another thing, is we don't even really get that much time with Lenore because the entire focus is on Frank to a weird degree.
Yes.
And like there's this throwaway line during the labor sequence where you probably remember it better than I do. It's the one where she's like, I don't want you to feel like you're boxed in like you did the last time by this child.
Yes. Yeah. Like pretty much outrightly stating that when they first had Chris, their 11-year-old son, Frank was not pleased about it.
Right.
And then later on, after the baby has gone on its first rampage and disappeared, and they're talking to the doctors at the hospital, they say, well, it says here that 8 months ago you inquired about an abortion. So it's like interesting because there's these themes of like reluctant parenthood and like not being enthusiastically ready, willing, and able to parent a child, and like whether that's selfishness or self-doubt or monetary concerns, like whatever the reasons are, they're never gone into in this movie.
Right. Yeah. This thing that's so strange about the way that they choose to play this is they seem to only be concerned with showing how the events of this movie are a hassle for the dad.
Yes. Yeah, and a hassle is like the perfect way to put it, because he's sort of begrudging and like rolling his eyes and trying to play it cool in a weird way, and
he's like, it's not my baby. It's not mine.
Yeah, but even that could be really interesting.
Oh, sure.
Because there's a whole thing where it's like, like theoretically speaking, the woman is the one who physically gets pregnant and gives birth. So there used to be, before like you could have paternity tests and stuff, kind of an assumed like, we don't actually know whose baby this could be.
Right.
Like the whole joke about, it's the milkman. You know what I mean? Like hubby goes to work all day in the 50s and the milkman comes and gives the wife some milk. But like that,
Amanda.
I know, I had to say it.
Jesus.
Come on. This is like a very milk-based movie. I have to be gross about something.
There's a lot of milk in this movie.
There's a lot of milk in this movie. It's
heavy-handed. They had I think those were like half gallons he was delivering. He developed
6 of them.
He delivered 4 half gallons, and when Frank puts them into the fridge, he had like 3 more already in there.
Yeah.
Which I guess, if you got a child, I guess, but you'd think that she would be
child
breastfeeding or something if you were expecting a baby.
Oh,
but
probably.
So they had.
I don't know. Back then in the 70s, I feel like it would be kind of like, oh, poor people breastfeed.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
Back then
you
you
give
were
your
lucky.
baby formula; it's fortified with all the vitamins it needs.
Yeah, back then you were lucky if you didn't get a Coors Banquet beer with a nipple on the end.
Yeah,
of it,
there you go.
And a cigarette.
Dip it in some whiskey. Off to the races.
But I forget what I was talking about. What were we talking about?
Just kind of the weird way this movie handles everything, like it's an inconvenience to Frank.
And it's what they choose to show in this movie is baffling to me.
Yeah.
As we said, all of these really dry sequences that go on along. There's the one thing we forgot to say in the things you might find. There's literally a scene where Lenore just reads TV Guide.
Yes. Yeah. She's like looking for a good movie to watch.
Yeah. And like.
And it goes on for like probably a full 40 seconds, which doesn't sound long, but it's really long when you sit there with it.
And this is like in the last half an hour of the movie.
Yes.
Too.
When the baby is really going on a rampage and their marriage is falling apart and Chris, the son, has been kept away from it all, but he's escaped his captor and is coming home. It's like, Lenore needs to read the TV
It's so
Guide.
strange. And it's all just from the point of view of Frank being annoyed, not like scared, not trepidatious,
right?
Not angry. Well, kind of mostly
angry at times, yeah.
But it's mostly him being just, he's angry, but he's not angry about the situation. He's angry about how the situation affects him on a very surface level way.
Yes. And he's barely even angry at Lenore, which, like, I'm not saying he should be, but from the character that he seems to be in this movie, I would buy it a lot more if he turned on her harder.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
sure.
like he's sort of, there's a few lines where he says, like, your baby did this, give me my son, talking about Chris, the not mutant child.
Right.
And he kind of denies, he's like, this baby has nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with me. He says that a few times. But like, yeah, it's his general emotions seem to be inspired by the fact that like this baby put them in the public spotlight in a negative way and made him lose his job, and his wife's being weird about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that happens off screen.
Yes.
So like when he goes to his office, they very casually show him strolling into the office, and nobody's acting as though anything weird's happened. And he has this conversation with his boss, where his boss is like, "Yeah, you got some vacation time,
right? Maybe you should leave and never come back."
Yeah, like even in that scene, I was like, is he saying he should take some vacation time just because he knows he had a kid, or does the boss know about the evil baby?
Everybody knows about the evil baby.
But you don't get that sense, because in that scene, he's like, I had to hustle past photographers who were trying to take my picture, and I'm thinking, why didn't they show that?
Well, they do when he's leaving,
yes.
but it's so weird because he shows up to work like nothing is wrong, and he doesn't seem frazzled or bothered at all. And like he comes in, and they didn't even like hire a couple extras to like turn and watch him walk down the rows, There's no reaction from anybody until the assistant's like, well, Mr. Whatever wanted to talk to you.
And there's a few scenes like that where it's just, they kind of are very dryly talking about the situation and relaying exposition about stuff that we didn't see.
Yeah.
Like the scene with the nurse. I mean, with the scene with the nurse is actually ends up being fun because she's secretly trying to get Lenore on tape so she can sell it.
Yeah. My initial knee-jerk reaction to that nurse was, what a fucking bitch.
Yes. But even
I didn't realize that. Like in the moment, I was just like, God, what a horrible nurse.
But even so, the reason you said that is because this nurse character is like, she comes in and she seems to know everything that's happened.
Yeah.
Lenore, how do you feel about the fact that this child is on the loose, has just killed another person?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we didn't see that. But
did you hear that it has fangs and claws
right.
instead of hands? And you're like, well, I've seen the fangs, but we haven't seen the claws.
Yeah, and there's no like emotion to any of this stuff. It's just people saying it, and it just it's a really fascinating movie in terms of what they chose to show.
Yeah.
And also the pace of it. Because as I was watching this, I think we probably both had the same thought. I was like, this movie would be 1,000 times better if it was more frantically paced, and if like the scene where the baby is born is like the ball that you just push the ball down the hill, and it just gets faster and faster and faster until everything blows up.
Yeah.
But they don't do that here. And so you mentioned the satire.
Yes.
There are definitely moments of satire in this. I think the way that the cops are treated in this is really funny because they're just a bunch of idiots running around.
All the street cops who just like every police officer in like a 50-mile radius shows up to pull their guns on a normal baby sitting in a yard.
Just start blasting away at anything that moves in the grass. That's fun. There's a fun scene with the head of like a pharmaceutical company that felt like something out of like RoboCop or something, where they're talking about this child that may have been a result of the drugs that they're using, and he's like, well, we should make sure that doesn't affect the quarterly something, and it's like, callous business capitalist stuff.
Yes.
But there's not enough of that stuff.
Right.
And I hesitate to think that maybe it just didn't land right, because the stuff is like the opposite of this movie. The stuff is about as on the nose with its satire as you could possibly
For a second,
be.
I was confused what you were saying, and then I realized you meant the film.
The movie, the stuff.
The stuff.
It's about as on the nose as you could possibly be with what it's sending up and the satire that it's going. But it's like it's so over the top with it that it works still.
Yeah.
And this feels like, if that's what they were going for, if this is meant to be kind of a satire, they don't go far enough with it.
Right.
And the focus on the dad never feels like it's in the know.
Yes. He feels peripheral to like everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I do this all the time. I rewrite the movies we watch and say, well, wouldn't it be better if so-and-so was the main character?
That's the only reason you have a podcast. I mean, that's...
Yeah, to assert that my opinions are correct.
Exactly, yes.
But I honestly do think that this movie would be better if it either was entirely from Lenore's point of view or it switched to her point of view, at least... for, you know what I mean? Even if it cycled back and forth between the two of them and their very different experiences of what's going on.
The two of them sharing the point of view
Yes.
and the experience of this, I think, makes it a much more interesting idea.
Right, because I'm even just imagining, like, so eventually it is discovered that Lenore is having the monster baby hide in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see the scene where she realized it was down there.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you could have a great creepy kind of suspense scene where she hears something in the basement and maybe she thinks she's just hearing things. Maybe she thinks it's the whole experience getting to her, but she goes down and, you know, how does she come to grips with the fact that she gave birth to this baby?
Yeah.
And it really is like gross looking. It's a gross looking baby. But like she comes to accept it.
Yeah.
Much more easily than all of the men running around in this movie.
Yeah, which I find, you know, I was jokingly saying as we were watching this has just as much casual 70s misogyny in it as Black Christmas does, but Black Christmas felt like it knew what it was doing.
Right.
And I can't tell if this does.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, like I kind of wondered for a lot of this movie if didn't really fully know what it was doing, because it's made in 1974. Mm-hmm. So like,
is that the same year as Black Christmas? Like Black Christmas 73.
It might have been 72, 73.
I don't think it was either 70. I think it might be the same year. Keep talking.
But so it's interesting because they do confront the issue of abortion in Black Christmas and in this movie. But this was still, 1974. I don't know.
Same year, yeah, 74.
Yeah, I don't know what else like. It seemed very natural that, like, Frank would not be in the delivery room. Mm-hmm. Like, there didn't seem to be any commentary about it. Right. It's just sort of like, yeah, all him and the dads are in this room hanging out. And, like, they're all being kind of... it is kind of a funny scene. Mm-hmm. But it's never presenting like this is what he should be doing or this is what he wants to be doing instead. He's not like I should be in there with her. He never says that.
No,
like,
he doesn't give a shit.
None of them do. Like but it's also not played up enough, I think, to really hit home how like casually misogynistic it is that like she's the one who physically goes through all this and yet Lenore's really pushed to the background.
Yeah, she's a real
movie.
afterthought.
Yeah.
And, the difference, I think, between this and Black Christmas is all of that stuff in Black Christmas is serving the story and serving the point of the movie.
Yeah.
Where, Elizabeth Hussey's character is put in this position that her survival gets put into question because of the way that men are treating her and treating the other women and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Whereas this, it doesn't feel like any of that stuff is knowingly being done.
Right.
Because the Lenore, like you said, she gets pushed to the background.
Right.
So then it just becomes about turning her into an afterthought.
Right. And that's kind of what I think I was sort of getting at, where earlier I said that even if Frank had kind of turned on her harder, I would have thought that was a more interesting movie, because then it would have been, she really would have been part of the consequences of what all was happening, rather than just kind of put back at home and told to stay there.
Yeah.
And just sit around and do nothing. Like, if there was more tension between the two of them, I'd be like, okay, we're seeing the consequences of the kind of casual 70s misogyny. We're just seeing it from the perpetrator's point of view rather than the victims.
I even think that the way that they play Frank in this could work if everything around him was going absolutely fucking nuts.
Yes.
And he was just like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, if he was just like, this is a house, I don't want to deal with this.
Well, so I thought it would be like, I think part of what makes me so angry about this movie is just that there are so many good themes that you could absolutely like play with. And,
definitely.
And it could be totally about Frank. It could be about how, like, your wife gets pregnant and her body changes. She gives birth and her body changes again. There's this whole new person that she kind of has to physically care for 24/7 in a way that shuts you out. You know what I mean? Like, you could show some of like him grappling with that, like feeling like alienated and displaced by this creature that he didn't even really want in their lives. And like,
I mean, even the idea of this monster baby coming out and causing all this havoc.
Yeah.
And then they push Lenore to the background while they keep doing all this crazy shit to find it. And if you were like, well, how come they push Lenore to the background? It's like, well, yeah, it's pretty fucked up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you've got all these all these men not dealing with the mother.
Right.
While they're doing, like, it reminds me of I was watching Vanishing Point, the car movie recently.
Yeah.
Love Vanishing Point. And it was the first time in a while that I had really, really sat down and watched it. And there's like 5 or 6 big set pieces in that, right?
Yeah.
He's Kowalski, the guy in the car, is going through different states, and every state he's the cops are after him. And every new state is kind of similar, where these cops, always men, chasing him down. Kowalski fucks him up.
Yeah.
And then he crosses a state line, and then the cops in the next state, also men, are like, don't worry about that guy. We'll take him out. No problem. And they don't. Like, they try to chase him down. They can't chase him. They end up smashing into shit and blowing up, and they can't get him.
Right.
And then he gets to California, and they call into the state police in California, and they cut to the control room in the California State Police, which is a very high-tech for the time control room, staffed entirely by women. And they use technology and their brains to figure out where he's going, how to stop him, and set up a way to get him, and they eventually do. And I never noticed that before, and I was like, that's real. They don't draw any attention to it right now.
Yeah, it's not a big feminist moment.
No, but it was like, that's really interesting. Like, they are going out of their way to say that brute force is not getting this done.
Right.
And I think that's kind of an interesting way you could have played this as well, where it's
absolutely. Yeah, and it reminds me of, like, I know you've made the point in the past about the movie The Thing, where, like, part of the point that movie is making is the fact that these are all men.
Right.
Like, isolated to deal with this really extreme situation, and their knee-jerk reactions all tend towards, like, paranoia and violence and jumping to conclusions, and only a couple of them at times kind of take a step back and say, whoa, let's stop. Let's bring the temperature down.
Right.
You could do something very similar with this movie.
Sure.
Where, you have that sort of, like, and I think Frank's character they try with Frank's character to do that, because so often he's he goes to the doctors or he goes to the police officers, all of whom are men.
Goes to the doctor, he goes to the police.
But he is always saying stuff to them like, you guys have to understand I feel the exact same way you do.
Right.
I'm just like you guys. I'm just
Right.
like everyone else. I'm not like, I agree. This is how we have to do it, men.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is kind of trying to fit himself into the stereotypical mold.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, he kind of breaks out of it. He finds like a level of compassion
Sure.
for the baby. And
Let's not get into the ending quite yet.
Okay.
I can't wait to talk about the ending of this movie.
I'll hold back. But you get what I'm saying. Like,
Right, yeah.
You could deal with these different things, or you could deal with some sort of like, I don't actually know if this happens to fathers, but like postpartum psychosis is a real thing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Like where there are women who fall into like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I had my baby about 5 months ago. He's a literal demon, and I think he's trying to kill me at night when I try to sleep. And they mean it.
Yeah.
They're being sincere. It's not like a joke.
Right.
And
right.
so that really happens, and that could be something genuinely nightmarish to deal with in a film.
Yeah.
And like, even if you still want Frank to be the one dealing with it, like, sure, have him in some sort of hellish new baby fever dream, but like you'd have to ratchet this movie way, way up.
Yeah, and I do think there is some of that, but again, the focus on Frank pushes it so far to the background because at the end, the sequence where she's reading the TV guide, she's doing that. She's trying to distract Frank from going to the basement.
Yes.
And from that point on, Lenore has like lost her mind. Like she's definitely...
She has been like slowly disintegrating over the course of the movie in the background.
Yes. And so like when they get to that point where she's kind of lost it and is covering for this murderous child, it doesn't really land because you haven't spent any time with her.
Right.
And then from the point of the view that you're seeing, it's just Frank being annoyed that his wife's being such a weirdo.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why are you lurking around in the dark at night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch TV. It's 11 o'clock at night. Where's the child?
So say dads everywhere.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, there is some stuff that I did like in this. Getting into the ending. First of all, the baby, the monster, is designed by Rick Baker.
Oh.
Who, of course, did American Werewolf in London and many other famous makeups. I guess he designed the suit, a giant suit that his girlfriend would fit in.
What?
And she acted as the baby in like the shots where it was clearly somebody in a thing.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then they also had a puppet that they used.
I love the giant baby suit. What a Halloween costume.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I thought the best baby murder sequence was, like I said, the milkman one. That was really fun.
Yep. The carnation milk truck.
Yes. Getting into the ending, I liked when they're going through. This had a very 70s look to it when they're driving the cop cars through the tunnels, and you see like the red lights are going around. That was really cool.
Yep.
And the act. So you get to the end of this movie, and the baby has been shot by the police, and manages to get away and crawls into the gigantic tunnels of
like
LA
canal tunnels or whatever.
The canals you'd see John
Greece.
Travolta driving in Greece. And so the fathers and the cops are wandering through the tunnels trying to find the baby, and then Frank finds the child.
Yes.
And has the script. So I want to give some credit to John Ryan here.
Please.
Because this guy, I don't know if he was never a leading man before.
Yeah.
Because this guy gives it everything he's got.
Oh, yeah. He goes for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the beginning of the movie, I know it's supposed to be like he's happy because he's having a kid, but it seemed like he was happy because he was the lead in the movie.
Yes.
And like you get this scene at the end where he's empathizing with the child and starts crying, and he's like just going for it.
Yeah.
And then this leads into this sequence where he grabs the baby and starts running away. As we were watching this movie, I was like, if I remade this movie, the only natural way that this ends for me is this father, who's been a complete shithead the entire time, has this moment of empathy with this monster baby.
Yeah.
And then the monster baby fucking eats him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I underestimated it. I was right. Just, getting because like because he doesn't earn any of that stuff. It's like he finally gets a look at him and he's like, oh, I guess you are my child. You look just like my weird grandmother. But it just doesn't land because it hasn't been earned.
Well, it's weird because I wish this movie made a bigger deal of the fact that Lenore has been protecting the baby in the basement.
Yeah.
And then Chris, the 11-year-old son, he runs away from the family friend ?
Yes, I think so.
Guy.
Oh, that's another great scene is when they just talk to the babysitter for a few minutes about nothing.
Yes.
On the phone.
But so he runs away from the uncle or whoever he's been staying with and runs home, and he comes into the basement and he's confronted with the baby too. And the baby has just killed his beloved pet cat.
Yep.
And even the kid says, don't worry, it's going to be okay. I'll protect you. And so I think there would be, if the movie made a little bit more of the fact that like the wife and mother has found some sort of way to connect and not get attacked by this baby and empathize with it. The son/big brother has also immediately embraced this mutant monster baby. And I think then, if there could be some sort of like moment where Frank reflected on the fact that like, well, if my wife and my son can come to accept this baby as part of our family, then maybe I need to do the same.
Oh,
like,
sure, yeah.
He never has, but they never connect those dots for you in any way. It's just sort of like the son is in the basement, is like, I'll protect you to the baby, and Frank the dad comes downstairs and he's like, get out of the way, Chris. And then he shoots the baby. He's the one who shoots the baby.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought the cops shot him, but he shoots him. That's
so it's
right.
like, even if he had pulled the gun and then hesitated and it had shown that like, oh, he's talked a big game, but when it comes down to it, he doesn't actually want to hurt this thing, then I would buy the ending in the sewers a little bit more, because it would be like he had a clear shot and he didn't take it.
Yeah.
And then to later on be like, I've been wrong, I've been a terrible father or whatever.
That reminds me, there are some fantastic conversations in this movie that, again, remind me of like RoboCop conversations.
Where there's like evil corporations lurking in the background.
Yeah, but there's an even better one where after being hounded by, I don't know if it was doctors or a corporation, he signs over the body.
Yes.
Because the intent is they're going to kill this thing.
Yes.
And he signs over the corpse.
And then they want to study it.
They want to study it.
Yeah.
And then I forget who makes this suggestion, but he's like, I already signed over the body to science. And this other guy's like, well, what if we blew him up?
Yeah.
What if there was no body? What if we killed him?
Total annihilation.
Total annihilation.
Yeah.
And like, which is in and of itself hilarious.
Yes.
But it doesn't feel to me like the intent is to be silly. It's like, and so it doesn't land to me as like satire. As I'm saying it back, I'm like, that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, but in the movie, in the moment, you're just sort of like, yeah, of course they want to blow it up, because the whole theme of this movie is apparently all the men really want to kill babies.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that stuff played so straight would work better if the rest of the movie was more heightened.
Yes.
Like RoboCop.
Yeah.
More movies should be like RoboCop, which should really be the name of my podcast. But yeah, so that brings us to the ending, which I will say, I have never seen an ending quite like this movie. I legitimately had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah, because you get to a point where it's like, how could this possibly end?
I thought he was going to pick the baby up and then like just run off into the tunnels, and that was going to be it. And it was going to be like, oh, he's decided to save the baby. That does happen.
Right.
But then he eventually comes out of the tunnel.
And all of the police in the LA area have surrounded him.
And they're all got their guns on him. And
there's one dude screaming at him.
One scream. He's like, I'm going to shoot him. He's like, no, if you shoot the baby, you're going to shoot me, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then these two doctor guys, who I think are the ones who want the baby to study, come up and are like, blah blah blah, give us something, or I don't even remember if they say much. And all the cops are getting heated, tensions are at the boiling point. Frank throws the child
Yes.
at the doctor.
Yes.
And all of the cops open fire.
While the baby latches on to the doctor's face and starts killing him.
They open fire and kill the baby and the doctor in a hail of gunfire.
Yes.
And then Frank just goes home.
Yes. Yeah, he hugs, and his wife, who they brought, the police put poor traumatized Lenore in the back of a cop car and drove her here to specifically make her watch her baby get killed.
Yes.
Frank and Lenore stare at each other for a second, and then they hug, and then the one quote unquote nice cop touches his back.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
And it's
unbelievable
ending. And
if I were to show, I would show this movie to people.
I would not.
I would cut it down where I would show the first 5 minutes up through the first baby murder.
Yes.
I would show the milkman murder.
Yeah.
And then I would show the last maybe 8 minutes of this movie. I think you get enough from that, and you can put the rest of it together in your head.
Yeah.
But it is an ending like I have never seen.
Because I don't.
I feel when I say I would show, I feel like it's worth it just to show this ending.
That ending, yeah.
And usually, if there's a movie like that, I'm like, oh, I watch the movie. I don't think you need to watch the movie. Just watch the last 10 minutes of this movie, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. But my problem with this movie is that it thinks it's saying a lot of serious shit, and it's not saying anything. And then it has this bizarre ending that doesn't match with any of the serious shit it thinks it's saying.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
There's no catharsis. There's no nobody has learned anything. Nobody has grown.
Right. Yeah.
And
the last line in the movie is the other doctors saying another baby has been born in Seattle.
Another one is born in Seattle, and it's it's just gonna keep happening because I don't know, birth control pills are evil.
I couldn't put my finger on what they were blaming it on. There was that one scene that seemed to imply it might have been birth control pills, but I think it was something else more specific.
I don't know. There is when the doctors are at the house convincing Frank to sign over the remains once there are any, and kind of going crazy. Lenore comes downstairs and tries to play good hostess in a really weird way. The doctor says to her, have you been taking the pills I've been giving you?
Yes.
And she says something like, well, maybe it's all those pills that were the cause of this in the first place. And he's kind of she knows. He has a look on his face oh no.
Yeah. This so
weird.
I think Larry Cohen's a little bit older than David Cronenberg, I think.
Yeah.
But
could you imagine a Cronenberg version of this movie?
Well, it's called The Brood.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very, very true.
This movie's a not very good version of The Brood because it kind of
absolutely
operates
in
the same space where I know that The Brood was kind of a direct response to everything that was happening with thalidomide babies. And have you not heard about this?
No.
So I'm probably going to butcher this story because I have not looked it up, but there was a
and
drug.
That's what the people come to us for.
Gross speculation.
Accurate information and well-researched.
Half-remembered stories. There was I believe it was a drug called thalidomide that was specifically being given to pregnant women because they thought it was like a vitamin or would aid with pregnancy.
Okay.
And what it ended up doing is causing gross, I mean widespread mutations and deformities in the children.
Got it.
I'm going to just double check this so I don't look like an asshole.
But it's sort of like a real version of what people tried to say crack babies were in the 90s, where there was this whole myth that women who'd done crack and got pregnant, that their babies were going to be barely human, and it wasn't true.
Yeah, so thalidomide was a widely used drug in the late 1950s, early 1960s for the treatment of nausea in pregnant women. It became apparent in the 60s that thalidomide treatment resulted in severe birth defects in thousands of children.
Yikes.
And so that's kind of where The Brood comes from, that kind of thing. And I think that's probably where this comes from as well.
Yeah, but this movie doesn't do as good a job.
No.
of putting that out there.
But it's that same sort of paranoia of pharmaceutical companies giving you something you don't know what it's doing to your baby. Overextended
medical intervention.
Right.
Yeah.
But But yeah, the Brood. I'm looking forward to talking about the Brood eventually because that's a
I haven't
great
watched
movie.
that in forever.
And it's also the Brood is also got a lot of like subtextual misogyny in it because it was the result of David Cronenberg wrote it after a horrible divorce with his wife.
I was gonna say, wasn't it like a breakup movie where it's just like, you horrible monster?
Yeah, and while it's not necessarily,
and it's David Cronenberg who already has a hard enough time dealing with women.
Yeah, it's not like across the board, just the way things are. You know, it's still in there in the way that the mother figures presented and represented and stuff like that. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. But it's interesting that this was a common or a shared idea.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is a ton of great ideas in here that, as we've been saying, are just not really exploited in any way that feels like, oh yeah, they really did something fun or interesting.
Right. That's the thing. It's like they needed to go pick a direction and go further in it, whether that direction was, we want to do like a kind of cerebral psychodrama about parenthood and like deep issues and themes, or we kind of just want to do an insane monster movie that's just like, what if evil cannibal baby?
Right.
Like either one of those, like one of those would have leaned more towards The Brood or even Rosemary's Baby, and the other one would have at least been like a fun monster movie.
Yeah.
And this ends up being neither because it can't decide where it wants to go.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I was just thinking about this as we were talking here. I think you could remake this movie and it would be real. You could do a really great job. I guess they did remake it in like the mid 2000s and it was not good.
Oh.
Larry Cohen said, if you're interested in my movie, if you like my movie, cross the street when you see this new one coming towards you. Even though I think he like co-wrote it. I don't know. But the problem is, I don't really know. Can you make this movie now without really getting into some questionable areas as far as like paranoia around what the drug companies are putting into your body and whether or not it causes birth defects? Like, I mean, I think you can. Obviously, you can. You can choose to do that if you want to. But I think it occupies a much more
controversial,
controversial space in this current moment in time,
which is too bad because I think that there's a difference between like conspiracy theorying your way around medical questions and then genuine questioning. Like, I think people should be able and allowed and encouraged to
question whether or not the earth is flat. Yeah, gotcha.
But you know what I mean? Like, if a doctor recommends a specific prescription to you, you should be fully informed of the potential like interactions and side effects.
The thalidomide thing is not made up.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's really valuable to be able to do that. And I do think that it's good to not just blindly always say, okay, whatever you say, I'll immediately ingest it.
Yeah.
But I think that's true outside of the medical realm too. Like people who get like weird supplements and shit on the internet, who do those like Herbalife things and whatever, like I would not take those.
No.
Like, questioning these kinds of things is good, but I know what you're saying. We're in the current political climate, especially in the United States, it's it can come off as a bit of a dog whistle to certain groups.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the vaccines causing autism thing is such
5G
a big deal. Yeah.
chips in your head. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting. I think it's.
But I think you could do something where it is sort of like the you know, like almost like what the Babadook does with dealing with motherhood and grief.
Sure, yeah.
You could do something really interesting with a remake of this.
Yeah.
That could deal with the sort of like physical alienation of pregnancy and birth and parenthood from both the mom and dad's points of view. Like it applies in different ways to both parents.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think you could do some really great stuff with it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Just lastly, Bernard Herrmann did the music for this. Bernard Herrmann, we talked about him once before. He did the music for Sisters, Brian De Palma's Sisters.
Yeah.
As a very famous film composer, he did the music for Psycho. He did North by Northwest. He did Vertigo. He did Citizen Kane.
Yeah. That's funny because when we were watching it, Greg was saying the only good thing about this movie was the soundtrack.
Yeah. There was a few of these classic film score composer guys kind of like fell out of vogue or something in the early 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Bernard Herrmann passed away, I think, in 1978.
Oh, wow.
So thankfully, this was not the last thing he did.
Thank God.
The last thing he did was Taxi Driver, I think.
This movie did not deserve him.
No,
I mean, I'm glad it was
not.
there because it was one of the highlights of watching this. Because, like, stylistically, there's not a lot to say about this movie. It looks very 70s.
Yep.
It's shot very 70s. Visually, other than the baby monster, it's not doing anything very interesting.
Yeah. It's weird, though, because I think, like, while it's not doing anything that interesting, I feel like you could, if you did remake this, you wouldn't need to tweak the style that much to make it feel modern. Because of the way that a lot of these, I think, obviously...
Interesting, because I was going to say, I actually think if you remade this and you left the style roughly the way it is, that feeling of, like, temporal weirdness and sort of displacement, like you walk into the hospital and you feel like you stepped back into the 70s.
Sure, yeah.
Could actually heighten some of the weirdness and the tension.
Yeah, I guess what I mean is just like kind of what I was saying earlier about it feeling like a mumblecore movie. There's just something weird about it that I feel like is because of the rest of the trappings of the movie, is the way everybody looks and everything.
Yeah.
It feels 70s, but I think a similar style would not be out of place. I guess maybe that's the way to put it. Not modern, but it wouldn't feel out of place.
I get what you're saying. Like if you found out the Innkeepers was happening down the street, you wouldn't be shocked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like it has kind of the same sort of conversational vibe as a movie like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, Bernard Herrmann did some really interesting movies toward the end of his career. Elmer Bernstein's another one. He did. Ivan Reitman grabbed him in the early 80s, and he did Stripes, he did Ghostbusters, and which is not the kind of stuff he was usually doing, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's the music's good. Bernard Herrmann, master, obviously. So the final question. This is number 196, I believe.
Yes,
196 on our list. Would you keep it here? Would you move it higher? Would you move it lower? Would you remove it from the list?
I would throw it all the way out.
Yeah.
Far, far away from this list. I don't think I was prepared for any other movie to make me think maybe Phantasm does belong on this.
Yeah.
This is not.
As much as I dislike Phantasm,
I
didn't actively maybe I did, and I said this on the show and I don't remember, but I didn't actively like wish that it was over. This was the first movie I think we've done where I was actively like checking my watch and being like, all right, okay, 10 more minutes and this is done.
Yeah. This is I thought of literally every single wild card either one of us has picked and just thought, why not that?
Yeah.
Why not that? Why not that? Why not that?
Just for reference, on either side of this on the list is Hellraiser at number 197 and Jacob's Ladder at number 195.
Okay. Why is this beating Hellraiser?
Great question. I'm
not a huge Hellraiser gal, but like I appreciate it for what it is and the sort of iconography of it.
Yeah.
I am baffled.
If you go to a horror convention or a comic book convention, and you see someone who's done a drawing of famous horror movie monsters,
you
know who you are going to see on that? Pinhead.
Yes.
You know who you're not going to see in that? The baby from this movie. Well, mostly because you don't really get to see a good look at it, but yeah. I'm going to play. I'm just going to check and see if it's on here before I do this.
Sure.
But I am going to play the Black Christmas card on this one and be like, if this is on here and Black Christmas is not on here.
I keep forgetting that it was bumped at some point.
Yeah, I believe it is. I don't think it's on here anymore.
That is so upsetting.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
It used to be at 195, so it was
definitely not
higher.
there. That's Jacob's Ladder now, isn't it?
Yeah, I know that they listed it the last time. It was listed under like a foreign title name or something. But
oh yeah, it was like I don't know, Merry Murder Day or something.
4 girls and a guy with a knife. I don't know where they tell you what it's also named by.
Yeah, I don't remember,
but yeah, I don't think it's on there because anytime it's been on there, it's been in like the bottom 10, and it was not there as I just scrolled through.
I can't believe this has beaten that out.
Yeah,
that's really upsetting. And seriously, like any of the wild cards that we've done, I would put on this list before It's Alive.
Yeah, I would agree.
Even I know, like one of my more recent wild cards was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and I know there was some debate whether or not that even qualifies as a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would still put it on this list before I put It's Alive on here.
Yeah, I mean, like it's
just in terms of like it's a better quality movie.
Yeah, I feel like the main thing getting this
that's it
on here is the Larry Cohen of it all, because he is such a he's one of like the more well-known schlock guys from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Do you think there are any of his other I'm not familiar with his work, but like are there any of his other movies that you would put on this list before It's Alive? Exclamation mark.
This is the only one of his that's on the list. I, again, have not seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
I would put the stuff on this list before I would put this on the list. So I'm looking forward to watching that. Because
I am too, because I would like to have a better opinion of this person.
Do you want me to tell you what it's about?
If there's a way you can do that without spoiling things hugely. Sure.
I'm pretty sure it's not I'm not going to tell you what it's about.
Okay. I will just patiently wait.
I can't remember when they reveal certain things, so I won't tell you.
Got it. If there are reveals involved, it's better not to risk it anyway.
But yeah, I think we both pretty clearly agree that this is not something that should be on the list.
Yeah, this
200 best horror movies.
Thinly veiled Frankenstein adaptation is really not.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Clay. It's Alive.
Oh, well, I mean, they use the name.
And he talks about Frankenstein, and his name is Frank, and it's his son that he created, and it's a monster that's misunderstood.
Yeah, that's
dies semi-tragically. Blah,
yeah,
blah, blah.
It is Frankenstein. Damn it.
Yeah, it's just a thinly veiled Frankenstein adaptation.
Yeah. That makes me like it even less. Well, it's funny you mentioned Frankenstein because as I mentioned before, I did hit the randomizer button earlier. Beep, beep, boop, beep, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop. And it's taking us all the way down to number 198. And this is one I think is going to be an interesting discussion, judging just based solely on where it is in the list, especially in relation to this fucking movie. It's a movie that has, the title is 3 of my favorite words, which are Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I'm pumped.
Yes.
Yes. I have not watched this in a very long time.
I'm very excited to talk about this because this is a movie that I love.
Yep.
But also I don't necessarily think is really that good. So
yeah. I mean, there's some questions of quality.
There's one glaring element that just brings the whole thing down a couple notches, and I blame it on...
What could that be?
I blame it exclusively on the mid-'90s or the early 90s. So we will get to that next time. Thank you guys for listening. If you want to help support the show, head over to patreon.com/thepensky-file, where if you join our Patreon, you can hear Amanda and I go through the Stephen King's second string of Stephen King. So, but I'll get it in December.
Yeah, we're working up to it.
Where we're covering the kind of the Stephen King also ran adaptations, the ones that are not on our main list here.
Some pretty good ones in that also ran list.
Yeah, I'm excited. We January was It Chapter 2, February was Silver Bullet, March was Salem's Lot, April is Needful Things.
Yes.
Christine is on that list. Are we doing Firestarter?
I don't know, but
I hope so.
I think sometimes They Come Back is on the list.
I hope we're doing Firestarter because they're doing a new Firestarter.
Ooh.
I saw the trailer for it the other day. John Carpenter does the soundtrack for it.
Nice.
So that alone makes me want to see it.
All right.
I saw that as a preview in front of, I saw Ty West's X. I wish we had just spent the last hour and change talking about X instead of It's Alive.
Damn it.
But yeah, and there's there's tons of other podcasts. Last year, Amanda and I covered the entire Friday the 13th series.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. So check that out. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Amanda, for joining me.
Thank you, Kai.
And we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.